Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing our build of the Estes Loadstar II. Now, in this video, we need to install the motor mount. Now, most of the time, this is a pretty straightforward assignment. It is not particularly complicated. However, there are some extra complications for today. And that is that when everything's all said and done, the motor isn't going to be a single motor. It's going to be two motors taped together, and the two stages need to fit together and be able to fit together like this, even after the motor mount is in. So we're going to be extra careful. Now, I have two of these yellow spacers from a variety of kits that I've built over time. The reason that we use these yellow spacers at all is because they're the same size as a motor, both diameter and length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, as two of them taped together, right? I'm going to put it into the first stage and push it all the way down. There. Now, this will simulate what it's like to have two motors actually in this thing. And when I put the second stage motor mount in, what I'm looking for here is that this right here, this centering ring, is going to be right up against the end of the red coupler. So I need the whole structure to be that far in when everything's all said and done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this like this for the time being, and I'm going to use the first stage as like a pusher, essentially, just to push it into exactly the right distance so that everything is all snug and ready to go. So it's time to apply the glue. The first, honestly, I mean, this thing needs to be in about over half an inch because that's the distance from the end of the second spacer ring to the end of the tube. So I'm actually going to paint two separate glue rings inside the rocket. Now, typically I would paint one that's farther in, and then I just use the bottle and get it closer to the edge, but I don't want to do that this time because both of them are going in farther. All right, so I'm going to paint the first one, I don't know, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches in. If I really wanted this perfect, I would measure, and then I know precisely how far I need to get this in there. But again, this isn't, when I push the engine, the rings past it, I'm going to end up pushing the glue along anyway, and it's going to go right where it needs to be. Okay, so there's the first layer. Second layer is going to go in, and this one I'm going to put maybe like 1/2 inch into the tube. Okay. Kind of missed. You can have a look down there if you can see it. Yeah, I ended up getting like double thick here, and yeah, they didn't quite line up. That's okay. All right, so this is ready to go. All I need to do here is push in like so, and I'm going to, that didn't work exactly how I wanted it to. That's okay. What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to take this out because I don't really need it anymore. But I am going to, there we go. Now that should be fine, one would hope. Yeah, it's not, it's pretty good. Let's just double check the spacing. Oops. Yeah, afraid that was going to happen. I ended up bumping things. All right, so a nice idea, but not going to work too well. I just want this to fit together well, and I'm going to have to work under the assumption that everything's going to be fine. Yeah. All right. I can probably test this, but I'm pretty sure that if I use this right now, I'm just going to end up jostling things, and I don't really want to do that. The other thing I could do, this isn't the world's worst idea, is I'll get myself a long dowel here, and I'll use this just to hold the motor mount in place. Do. Okay. All right. It seems nice and snug. I'm going to get this out up, and yep, failed miserably again. So the yellow motor mount or motor spacer guide is just not going to help here, unfortunately. The best I can do, I think, is just use the red coupler as a pusher and get it exactly where it needs to go, because they should be flush. All right, there we go. I guess that's about as good as it's going to be. Now, the instructions say that the ends should actually be even, and they're not. I'm okay with this because if the ends aren't, I guess I could push it a little farther. That would just give the spacer or the coupler a little more space to work with inside of there. But that also might mean that neither the engines fit particularly snugly. So I think I'm pretty happy with this. If these two can go together like so, then that should be what I want. And the whole motor debacle, I mean, I can test it if I want to, but essentially the red part right here, remember, had to push that centering disc, and it did. So everything should be exactly where it needs to be. So good enough. I mean, that didn't exactly go as planned, but this is rather important because, if I don't get the motor mount here in far enough, then the two won't fit together at all. And if I get it in too shallow, or too far that way, then the motors won't fit where they're supposed to. So I'm going to leave this as is. Good work. First stage, you did your job. All right. It is also worth noting that I'm probably going to sand the coupler here just to make sure I don't end up with, it is pretty smooth right now, but it could probably be smoother. All right. Last major bit of construction is attaching the launch lugs. Launch lugs, remember, are these two bits here that have been added to a little bit of balsa as a standoff. I need to put one right at the back, and one's going to be here at 5 inches. So this is going to be usual construction. I'm not going to take the time to do the 2 layers of glue because this just being the launch lug, hopefully it never really experiences a whole lot of force on it. I will give it a little bit of a chance to get a little tacky before I attach it, just to make my life a little bit easier. Now, I do have a line drawn, and I have my point marked, but of course, the line should be straight, but I definitely need to make sure that's the case. So after these two are attached, I'm going to have to sight them in. And it wouldn't be the world's worst idea to go get a launch rod and make sure that they can actually fit down the launch rod, because otherwise not particularly useful. Right. It looks like it's a little askew, and I'm not entirely sure in which direction. I mean, according to the line, it looks pretty good. I think maybe if I bump the back a little bit, maybe that'll make it a little bit better. I'm not entirely sure. All right, well, putting the second one on might clear up the matter as to what needs to go where. way. I'll get a little tacky before I start attaching it. Again, this one goes right at the base of the rocket. Looks pretty well centered. It's a little bit of glue that came out the sides, not too much. I'm going to apply fillets over this anyway, but it would be nice to get that cleared up. Looking down like so, let's have a look and see how good it is. They look pretty well aligned, so I'm pleased with that. This this side right here of the rear one is the one that was chewed up and I sanded earlier. That definitely needs to be cleaned up a bit. Ideally, just putting it through the launch rod would clean things up a little bit, but I don't know. It might require a little bit of encouragement with hobby knife or just sanding it to get that to be perfect. All right, now this is pretty much it for construction. There isn't a whole lot more to do here before I start the finishing process. The only major thing that's worth doing at this point is putting on the fillets. Now, I do want to put fillets on the launch lugs, but I'm going to give them a pass for the time being. So I'm not going to do this side. I'm going to do these and these joints right now and try my best not to bump the launch lugs. They seem pretty firmly anchored at this point, but you know, better safe than sorry. It's also worth mentioning too, I generally would want to put a fillet inside the motor mount in a situation like this. But because stuff needs to go inside here, if I put a fillet in or if I just pump some glue in there and I don't do a particularly good job, it's very likely that that would affect how well the coupler slides in. And that's probably not worth the risk. There should be enough glue for the motor mount as it is right now to hold things effectively. So I'm not going to worry about that. There are other things that I can worry about more. Anyway, just making sure that I didn't bump the launch rod or the launch lugs in any way, and they look pretty good. All right, so this needs to dry because I don't want to put it down like this because it might bump the launch lugs. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple rings of glue, and I'm going to, it's not balanced unfortunately as it stands right now, but I'm going to grab something heavy like this pair of scissors and put them in the front, or at least it's not quite balanced enough unfortunately either. I'm just going to use the scissors to counterweight things here a little bit, find a nice balance point, which is apparently easier said than done. All right. There we go. That'll work. All right, so I'm going to let the glue dry. I'm going to apply the fillets to the bottom side, both on the launch lugs and on the undersides of the fins that I haven't done at this point. And then it is time to start finishing. I actually, if you recall, the nose cone is, the upper part of the whole rocket is two pieces that are currently joined of plastic. So I've painted them black already. They're just waiting. So in the next video, we'll probably look at them and do some of the finishing steps. All right, thanks for watching. I will see you next time.